Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I don't know what drugs the people who made Rebuild the Galaxy are on, but I'm willing to forego my whole no drugs policy and sample those.
Okay.
Have you watched Rebuild the Galaxy yet, Bradley?
No.
You've got to.
I keep seeing behind the scenes, though, with Bobby Moynihan and Ahmed Best, but that's about it. Like, I'm not about to watch that right now.
We managed to sneak in before my boyfriend went to work, because I don't know if you remember on a previous episode of the show, I mentioned him storming angrily into my room to be like, why did you not tell me about Rebuild the Galaxy? And I went, honey, you are, at best, someone who just is okay with Star Wars.
Right.
At worst, you are someone who tolerates it. I am not going to inflict Rebuild the Galaxy on you. He's like, no, we are going to watch it together because there's Ewok bounty hunters and I want to see it. We watched the first episode last night. Surprisingly has like a plot and a moral message here. Like, I can tell where this is going. It's not just Groundhog Day. No, so we've only watched the first episode, but the first episode's already like crazy. Some of the stuff they do in the first episode is already pretty insane, and I know it's going to get more insane because I've seen clips from the other episodes that are coming. But we're not going to do Rebuild the Galaxy, even though I kind of want to now.
I like I said, I think maybe we just watch it together and we just react to it or something. I've never seen it, so maybe I'll be the fresh one and then you can be like, you know, the informative one when we watch it. I'll make a pledge right now. I won't watch it until we record ourselves watching it, and then we'll do something.
Maybe we stream it on TikTok or something.
That's what I mean. Yeah, we'll do, because now
we can do
live,
that,
right?
Well, I could always go live because they changed it, but yeah, I did hit 1,000 followers on my TikTok account recently. So by the old rules, I could have gone live. What I really want, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to broaden my content because I'm not gonna get to this number on just doing Dragon Age content. But I do want to get 10,000 so I can do playlists, because you can't do playlists until 10,000.
What's the playlist feature?
You can add videos to a playlist, and then like you can play through them in order.
Why do they need 10,000?
I don't know why the fuck TikTok is like, you need to have 10,000 followers to be able to access this feature. I think it's really stupid, personally, that you need 10,000 to do that. And I probably won't hit it before the app starts falling apart, because the United States has banned it.
I was gonna say before it's taken out of the
before it's taken out of the App Store. Yeah. Boy, the United States government sure is doing fine, doing good. No real problems with that. Hey, speaking of governments that are doing totally fine and with no problems whatsoever, Bradley, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Tales of the Empire. This time we're talking about Bariss Offee's story, where the former Jedi does what she must to survive a rapidly changing galaxy. Charles, which of these three stories did you like the most, and which did you like the least?
I liked episode 1 the most because it kicked ass. I disliked episode 2 the most, and here's my thing. I think episode 3 is kind of the weaker episode because it's doing a lot of, ooh, there's mysterious stuff happening in the background. Ooh, there's a traveler, and Bariss has an old friend, and she's part of a thing. We wonder what this is about. But my problem with episode 2 is I don't buy the central conceit of the episode. I don't buy... It was the only moment watching this that I went, I don't buy this at this point in this character's journey. And so that weakened the whole episode for me. Like, I liked where it landed at the end, but I just couldn't accept how we got there in terms of what we had already seen of the character and what we know about the Inquisitorius and how it functions. So I guess we'll talk about that when we get to episode 2. Bradley, what episode did you like the most, and which one did you like the least? And you're going to say the same answer as me, I'm sure, because you do this every week.
I do this every week, but because I also recently just watched everything today like you did, it's fresh in my brain.
Yeah, I watched it again this morning.
Yeah, so it's fresh. Episode 4, Devoted, was the best episode for sure. I thought that gave me the Inquisitor show vibes that I wanted. Like that was almost to me like the pilot of an Inquisitor show. Like that was what it was. It was so fucking good. That was definitely the best one for me. My least favorite, yeah, it's kind of a toss up, honestly, between the next two. I feel like they were both kind of not as strong, obviously, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose the second one only because I feel like it has the least, like, I don't want to say plot because it definitely has a plot. Like there's a beginning, a middle, end, but I feel like it just has the least content. I guess that's a better way to say it. I don't know. I just didn't like it as much. And I'm kind of with you. I thought that the turn was the realization, if you will, wasn't earned as much. She just sees a bunch of people get murdered and she's just like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. But it's like, really? That's not, I don't know. She wasn't in the Inquisitors. We'll talk about it when we get to the episode two.
Okay, well, that was succinct. That might have been our most succinct thing you liked and things you disliked. Let's do episode. I'm going to keep saying episodes 1, 2, and 3. It's actually episodes 4, 5, and 6.
I know. I do the same thing because I just had to change it in my notes because I had it originally as 1, 2, 3, and I was like, wait, shit, no, that's wrong.
Yeah, because I mean, on the one hand, the Morgan episodes and the Bariss episodes are kind of two fundamentally different stories, but on the other hand, I can kind of see why you pick these two women and you
Right.
put their stories in contrast because Morgan's story is somebody who very much is going from someone who is a victim of these atrocities to someone who is a villain and perpetrating these atrocities. And like she's going deeper into being a villain. And Barriss arguably never really was a villainous character. Like even in these episodes, she's presented very sympathetically, but she is somebody who was part of this system that is oppressing people and is moving away from it. So we went into the darkness and then out of the darkness by the end of it. So I do get it. But on the other hand, the two stories feel so different from each other. And I wonder if this is just because the quality of the story for Barriss, one, the quality of the story is better. Two, we've been waiting to find out what happened to Bariss Offee since 2012, 2015. I don't know when the last season of Clone Wars aired, but it was in that window. So we'd been waiting to find out what happened basically since season 5 of the Clone Wars ended. And Dave Filoni's been teasing us forever and ever and ever. So I wonder if finally being able to get that, like the level of hype for these 3 episodes was astronomical when this came out.
Yeah, I think we just didn't have enough time with Morgan to really appreciate her and the fact that, it wasn't the same obsession, I think. You're right. It's just we've just been waiting so long for Barriss and she's such a, beloved kind of character to some people. So I feel like that was something she was already starting off on a high comparing these two. Like Morgan's story is great and I love Diana Lee, but I just think that her character is too new and so it doesn't resonate as much, so unfortunately that's what happened, but I think they did a good job with both. I just think that Barriss obviously had the upper hand this time around.
2013, by the way, is when The Wrong Jedi aired. I just checked it really fast because I am who I am. It was 2013 was the last time we saw Bariss Offee, and we've been waiting. We've been waiting 11 years to find out what happened to Bariss. So obviously the hype is astronomical on this, and it's kind of amazing that they did manage to pull the story off in 3 episodes, but it's also kind of amazing that it was the story everyone assumed it was going to be. Like, Inquisitor Barriss was such a huge fan theory.
Right.
And for it to turn out to just be Inquisitor Barriss, like it's the thing everyone thought it was, and also have that land, I think really speaks highly to the quality of the writing of these episodes and also the quality of just the production value of these episodes, that they really put a lot of love and care into these episodes, and you can really tell, which also helps them land as something that we've been waiting for. If anything else, I wanted more.
I know.
I wanted more from this, but I also, when I rewatched it this morning, I felt like I was satisfied with this particular chapter of Barriss' story. Whether or not it's the last chapter or not, we'll get to episode 3 when we get to episode 3.
Well, let's start with episode 4, Devoted. Former Jedi Bariss Offee is recruited by the Empire. This episode takes place in 19 BBY, obviously, during literally Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, it starts literally at Revenge of the Sith.
So I didn't really have the need to be like, hey, you wonder what's going on during in the galaxy during this time? We know what's going on during this time.
We know
The
what's
Jedi
going on
Temple
during
is
this time.
burning.
It
uh,
is the events of the Clone Wars season seven episodes 8 through 12, the movie Revenge of the Sith, and
yep,
also the first episode of the Bad Batch Aftermath are all occurring right as this episode is occurring.
simultaneously. I love it, and I love that. What's the line that the stormtrooper says, or the clone trooper says? He says something along the lines like, just be glad you're not a
Just be
Jedi
glad you're
anymore."
not a Jedi. So I'm gonna refer back to our friends over at First Steps to Star Wars podcast a lot because they had an absolutely fucking amazing episode on Tales of the Empire,
Oh,
and a
okay.
lot of their theories and things that they've pointed out I'm either going to bring up or I highly encourage everyone to look back at their episode. I'm just going to point you to them because they had some pretty fucking amazing theories and shit. But one thing that I think they pointed out, and one thing that I agreed with, is that there were definitely orders specifically not to Order 66 Barriss, which also plays into the Iskatakaris novel. Because in the Iskatakaris novel, that's one of my favorite Star Wars novels, and Rise of the Red Blade. There it is, Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade. I blanked on the name. One of the things that's pointed out in Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade is that there's certain people that the Emperor is like, no, don't kill them. And Barriss is definitely one of those people. But I do also love the clone trooper line that's like, just be glad you're not a Jedi. Meanwhile, on the ship, the Venator, Jesse's like, yeah, that's not an argument, actually. We have specific orders to kill Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, there's so many. This brings up so many things because it's just like, well, because I guess the longest time people have been like, well, what constitutes as a Jedi, right? Is it just a Force user that they were just murdering, or was it like, no, they're specific people that each one of them has to kill, or like they're all given specific things. Like you're in, you're with Luminara, so kill her. Like you're with Ahsoka, kill her. Like they're all like, I feel like it's more specific. I feel like at first it was very general, right? Like when we watch the movie, it's just like, yeah, just kill all the Jedi.
Just
But
kill
then
the Jedi, yeah.
once we start getting into these smaller, kind of like closer stories, like it's very clear that like no, each one possibly has more of a focused target. It's not just kill anybody with a lightsaber, because then there's so many loopholes to that, or
Well,
like
it's
to
also
killing the Jedi.
it's also like there's exceptions to the rule as well
Right.
because like obviously he made one for Anakin.
Sure.
Like and that's in the movie. It's never explained, but it is kind of a plot hole in the movie that he says kill all the Jedi and somehow the clone troopers don't think that Anakin Skywalker is a Jedi, which is
Right.
not something that's explained. So this is also something that's kind of explained. Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade, I thought, did the best job of turning to the audience and saying, we're going to explain why some of these people survived, is because the clones. It's also much easier to make exceptions. It's
Sure.
an easier thing to blanket say, kill all the Jedi, except for like these 20 that
these
we have
these 20
decided.
people.
These 20
Yeah.
people that we have decided. Also, make sure you kill Ahsoka Tano. I cannot
Yes.
stress this enough. Ahsoka Tano and not Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi need to die. Do not fuck up killing these two people. So
Yeah,
anyway, they fuck
that
up
is it.
killing those two people.
The only two people that truly matter in this whole ordeal, really, because if you think about it, they're the only people that can, like, quote unquote, turn Anakin
That's
back. Like,
exactly why
yeah.
there's almost certainly standing orders to kill Ahsoka Tano, kill
Yes.
Obi-Wan Kenobi, kill Yoda.
I'm surprised that they
There's
weren't like the orders weren't like kill them and then also bring me the body for proof, because that definitely doesn't happen. Like everybody's like, oh yeah, we killed Kenobi, he just fell in the water, so he's obviously dead. And then Ahsoka, well, yeah, the ship blew
actually
up or
no,
something.
because Cody is looking for him.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, Cody is sending out
Well,
like
that's because he misses him.
scout traits. So, yeah.
He misses his boyfriend.
Actually, no. I think it's more of a they're
Oh,
exes now, but he's like
that's
trying to
right.
stalk his social media
Yeah, there you go.
because Cody did try to murder him with a cannon.
Fair enough.
And I do feel like if my boyfriend tries to murder me with a cannon, we're breaking up. That's irreconcilable differences here.
To be fair, though, in Bad Batch, it looks like Cody is guilty. He has a guilty conscience of attempting to kill his ex-boyfriend. So, I mean,
Ugh.
Anyway,
People
I
who are
do.
not killed include Bariss Offee and also Lynn. Hey,
Lynn,
Lynn's
yes.
here
Okay.
from the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, played by the
I
same actress as played her in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So, hey, here's another actress who's playing the same character she played in live action again in animation.
I just love that she was given like almost a, I don't want to say filler role, but like in the Kenobi show, they were just like, oh, we just need another Inquisitor, right? And so
I
they
don't think she
have
has a
this.
single line of dialogue. I think she just sort of stands
She
there.
does. She has a few, but they're not. She's not like super invested in the story. Like she's
Does
just kind
she?
of there. Yeah,
Does
she
she
has a
have a
couple lines.
single line of dialogue?
Yes, she has a couple. Fourth sister, sure.
Her
Um,
sister have dialogue.
she talks to Riva all the time.
I think okay. I did have to check it. I did have to check it, and yes, I am wrong there. She
Okay.
does have lines of. Oh, it's in the Inquisitor scene
Yeah.
where they're in the meeting.
Yes, they have little boardroom meetings, and she's there, and
It's the
she says
boardroom
things.
meeting. You know
Yeah.
what? I fucked that up, so I'm going to have to rewatch Obi-Wan Kenobi now
Kenobi, yeah, probably.
in penance.
But what I love about including the Fourth Sister in this storyline, which was so great, first of all, is that she does get that small role, but then they turn her into something bigger here, which is like honestly, fast forwarding slightly through the whole thing, she's kind of the only Inquisitor who survives, this whole ordeal, which is crazy to think about. Like, there's only a select few in this whole entire
Yep,
everything we know, and so far
she's one of two
she's one
Inquisitors.
of two, yeah, that I can think
She's
of
one
that
of
has
only
survived.
two that have survived.
Right. And quote unquote turn, I guess, from the Inquisitorius at the end,
Yep, because
supposedly.
Riva deserts them, and
Yep.
now Fourth Sister deserts them. Once again, First Steps of Star Wars podcast doing a fantastic episode on this. Did theorize when we get to episode 3 that it takes place after the events of Star Wars Rebels, like it's very close to the end of this timeline before A New Hope. And I like that. I like the idea that the Fourth Sister is the last Inquisitor left.
I do like that. Yeah.
I do. I love that headcanon, so I have chosen to adopt it.
Yeah, I think I bring it
Anyway,
up later, but we'll talk about it in episode 6. But I have a point that I said where I think it takes place. So
this episode fucking rules.
this was okay. So in my brain, this is the pilot episode to the Inquisitorius show. Like this is how you started off, right? Like it's like okay, they're getting all these new recruits, and then now the new recruits are like trying to vie for like a position in the Inquisitorius. That's the fucking show right there. And then it's like them going on missions with the other Inquisitors, trying to prove themselves, also backstabbing each other and doing stuff like this is oh god, they did such a fucking good job of like being like, hey, what happens when we only have one space left in the Inquisitorius? Well, we're gonna make you fucking fight for it.
We're gonna make you kill each other.
Yes.
And that's a classic Star Wars like thing.
I love it.
I mean, that's a classic trope in general. That we're going to toss two people in the pit and have them kill each other in order to ascend to the role of whatever. That is a classic Star Wars thing. I haven't read these comics, but I'm pretty sure the Imperial Guard in Legends,
Mm.
that's part of how they do it.
Oh, okay.
And it's also a thing that we've seen the Sith in Legends do. It's a classic thing to be like, you need to kill the person that you've been training alongside in order to finally ascend to this role. Which I love it. I love that trope as a bad guy thing.
I also love how okay, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I love how the episode kind of ends with the class of BBY 19, all four of them, the Inquisitors, with Merrick now returning
Merrick's
and
fucking here
fucking random Inquisitor number 5. So I love that they're both there from Tales of the Jedi.
because they have the model sitting around. They had already
I think that's
modeled.
exactly what it was.
They
Well,
had
I don't
modeled the fifth, or it's.
well,
I was about to say the
unnamed
sixth
Inquisitor.
brother, but it's not. The
It's
unnamed Inquisitor. They had
officially
modeled
in
the unnamed Inquisitor or
right.
whatever. So they were like, yeah, let's just dump him in there. And then Marak, who's really easy to model because he's just got his faceplate.
I know. I wish, honestly, whereas we'll get into it in a second with the second story. I feel like they should have been in the second story too. I wanted more of them because, like, having them just stand there next to her and being a part of Class of 19 BBY is fine. But I wanted more. I was like, I saw Merrick and I thought, oh, fuck. Like, they're going to actually tell us who he is or, like, what his fucking story is too. Like, this is a fantastic.
See, unfortunately, you and I had already discussed Merrick at length when this episode, or Marak or whatever his name is, at length when this episode came out. So my reaction was to groan and lull my head back onto the couch because I was like, oh, here we go. They're not going to fucking explain where this guy comes from. They're not going to explain
No,
his deal. But
I'm so
apparently he
sad.
actually was an Inquisitor. Like, that's not somebody running around in his armor. That's not some new... No. I mean, StarWars.com did say he was an Inquisitor. Like, they were clear in the supplemental material that the guy was an Inquisitor the whole time.
Right. So
And
now that makes, yeah, that makes me
so,
believe
like,
something
here
else
we
now.
see him. It's not telling us anything that we hadn't already seen. I still think he's, like, resurrected from the dead by Night Sister magic, and he's a zombie.
Right. Well,
In
I think that's what that explains versus him being alive as an Inquisitor during Ahsoka versus just a guy like being puppeted. Like it has to be
But to be
that for them.
clear, he's just a guy here. He's just here in the meeting.
I know I
Because this
wanted him
is
to be there. I was like,
This is
more,
also the
more.
first class, so, like, I also think it's notable that none of the Inquisitors we see in the scene are Inquisitors that we see elsewhere, with the exception of Fourth Sister. So we
Right.
know from Inquisitor Rise of the Red Blade that there are 3 Inquisitors who do not have to be tortured into it. They got to skip that part.
Okay.
And that
Mm,
was Grand Inquisitor,
right.
Seventh Sister, and 13th Sister.
And I'm wondering, I'm looking up the list right now of all of them. I'm trying to think like what when they get their names, I thought that was like when they were like inducted,
Well,
but I
they
guess
also
that's
don't
not.
they don't reference the names at all of the Inquisitors in this. And once again, First Steps, a Star Wars podcast, had the excellent theory because of the way that the Inquisitors talk to Barriss in this.
Hmm.
I forget which one of the hosts brought it up. I think it was Wyatt brought it up. But because of the way the Inquisitors talk to Barriss in this, they clearly have a lot of respect for her as like the first person to publicly stand up to the Jedi.
Right.
And so they had the theory that Barriss is actually the first sister,
Interesting.
which I love.
Because they don't have anybody with the moniker of first sister. So
They
you're
don't
right.
have a first sister. And I also think it's notable that none of the Inquisitors, I don't think they refer to Lynn as the fourth sister in this episode.
Not in this episode. She says specifically, like when she calls her Lynn, she says I don't
That's
go by
not
that
my
anymore.
name.
But she doesn't say fourth sister, right?
Right. So I don't know, maybe they hadn't categorized like the Inquisitors into their roles yet.
I guess they would be 1, 2, 3, 4, if you think about it, because if you
They've
start
got to
with
be one.
unidentified Inquisitor on the left, he's first brother, I guess. And then you could say that Merrick was second brother, and then if
Barriss
Barris
is.
is first, I guess she would be fourth. I don't know where that makes sense
She
because
can't be third
Reva's not
sister
around.
because that's Riva.
Right, but
Yeah, you see,
Reva's
this is really
younger.
confusing how they do. Maybe they just throw darts at a fucking dartboard. Maybe just
Yeah,
throw darts for the first class, and whichever the one they get.
I got a better one. I got a better
Okay.
explanation right here. So the title of third sister, the title of fourth sister is just held by whoever kills the person who has it before them. So it's kind of
Oh,
like
you
they
think it
keep.
operates on Klingon promotion rules?
Yeah, I think it's just somebody who holds like second sister rank or whatever, and then once second sister dies, then there's another second sister who can be replaced. You know, if that makes sense.
The thing is that the Inquisitor system makes no goddamn sense.
It doesn't, and I really want
That's
someone to
fine.
like
That's fine.
explain it.
Me, give it to me, okay? Hey, Del Rey, I'm available at any point.
Yeah, because
Hire me. I
some
will
people don't
explain
have
this
numbers or
somehow.
names.
Give me the Inquisitor. I was going to say give me the Inquisitor book, but we already have an Inquisitor book. Give me
Right.
another Inquisitor book, and I will explain how this happened.
Yeah, I need a solid Inquisitor novel or something that's going to fully explain like okay, because especially when when Riva gets the quote unquote title of Grand Inquisitor, is she no longer third sister anymore? Because she temporarily has that title of Grand Inquisitor. I know it's a farce and they're just kind of fucking with her, but like
Yeah,
technically
they
she
are
does
just
have the
fucking
title.
with her.
So like even when the Grand Inquisitor dies in Rebels, like does someone
Well,
theoretically
because
become
they're
Grand Inquisitor?
they're fighting over it in Rebels season 2. The other
Right.
Inquisitors that are left, Seventh Sister and Fifth Brother, are fighting over the title. Although even in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Fifth Brother is supposed to be the next in line. So like, how does that work? We are spending too much time trying to figure out how this works.
You're right. We got to move on to the next
We
episode.
got to move on. We got to move on, and we got to talk about fucking Darth Vader showing
Oh,
up at the end of
yes.
this episode.
Vader shows up.
That hits different. We didn't mention it at the top of the episode, but the week that we recorded this, James Earl Jones did pass away.
Yeah.
Which that sucks. He's an absolutely iconic voice in Star Wars. Vader doesn't speak here at all, but seeing him on screen after this past week definitely hit different. So that was a downer, but I had to bring up that was my reaction to seeing it was,
No, for
oh
sure.
man, it absolutely sucks we lost James Earl Jones. He was 93 and he had a fantastic fucking career. Like, the dude was a legend.
Sure. It's definitely he went out on a high note for sure.
He did. He went out on a string of high notes. Like,
Right.
he's been doing high notes his whole career. Absolutely incredible. I might tomorrow I'm going to be around the house. I might put on one of the original trilogy movies. I don't know. It sucks, and seeing Vader hit different this morning. R.I.P. James Earl Jones. But Vader's here and he's looking awesome and he's sitting on his throne, of which clearly he has, like, we haven't seen his throne in the Fortress Inquisitorius. We haven't even talked about the fact we're seeing the Fortress Inquisitorius get built on Nur.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's kind of like halfway done.
It's kind of like halfway done.
I say
Gorgeous
that.
shots. Gorgeous shots. They're like fucking paintings.
Yes.
The various shots of the fortress being built. It's some of the most beautiful stuff they've ever done.
I do love that. I love how he does have a chair. He's just
He
like,
does
you
have
know
a
what?
chair. They built
It's like-
his chair first.
Right. Everything else is being like you can see like they're constructing the tops and like it's trying to like build the point and it's like no, he needs his chair first before we do it.
Yeah, he needs his chair so he can sit in his chair, which is not as impressive as his big chair in Castle Vader.
Sure.
But he has a big chair, which is the important thing. Oh boy, this episode was good.
Moving on to episode 5, Realization. On a mission to hunt a fugitive, complications change Barriss forever. This is also, I was going to put like a year to it, but honestly, this is just like within the first year of her being an Inquisitor, so I feel like it's kind of in the same vein of 19 BBY. Don't
It
think
has to
there's,
be.
yeah, it's too, but this is where I get issues with this, right? So this episode, her and Lynn are on this mission to find a possible Jedi, right? That's kind of like the whole thing. And then Barriss is like, no, it doesn't say anything about it being a Jedi. It just says it might be a Force user. But what I don't like is how Barriss is already questioning the motives of the Inquisitorius, right? She's still in the mindset of we're here to make the Empire better and help the people and blah 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 blah. But it's like the Inquisitorius never really like was like, hey, we're here to make people's lives better. Like I don't think they've ever tricked her.
Here's my problem with this, and I mentioned at the top of the episode that the central conceit of this episode is difficult for me to reconcile. They play this off as some time has passed. How did Barriss not realize up to this point that the Inquisitors were this way? The Inquisitors, every single time the Inquisitors have shown up, anything ever, people die. That is across all of the Inquisitors' appearances that we have seen. In Star Wars Rebels, they massacre a ship full of people to try to get to the baby, the Force-sensitive baby. Obi-Wan Kenobi, they show up and they do a pronouncement, and then Reva chops somebody's hand off.
Right.
So, like, this happens constantly. They show up and people are getting killed. Jedi are getting killed. They're just killing them. They're not trying to recruit them the way Barriss is doing. How has Barriss not noticed this with some time? How in her first mission did she not realize that the Inquisitorius' job is to murder the Jedi? And how did she also not realize, like, has she never been outside of Coruscant or a major system and seen the poverty? Because that's another issue. She turns up to this village and she's like, man, they live in squalor. How can the Emperor allow this? My sister in the Force. Did you not realize this was going on? How? How did you, one of Vader's personal assassin squad, how did you not realize these things were happening? So either this has to be her first mission, or so close to the last one that she's never encountered these two things before, because otherwise there's no reason she wouldn't realize this was happening. And also, like, if she's undergoing the same conditioning that the other Inquisitors are undergoing, just in a more TV friendly version, because they can't torture her on screen, then, like, why did it not take? Did they institute the torture after? Did they feel like she didn't need it because she was in prison? Like, I struggle, and this episode is fine. Like, this episode is perfectly fine. The actual story inside of itself makes sense. She doesn't realize that the Emperor is doing this, that this is what the Empire stands for. She comes to realize it, and she ultimately turns on Lynn and saves this Jedi. But I struggle to reconcile that with her position as an Inquisitor. I feel like she should have known this was going on.
So I have a theory. You brought up a really good point, and I think
Okay.
this is so. When I said that, I think this has to take place pretty early on. I think this does take place probably a few months or if not weeks after the first episode, right? I think that what they did early on in the Inquisitors was they paired up a more seasoned person or somebody who was possibly higher ranking in the Jedi Order or somebody who was like had to be turned in a way, and they pair them up with this more inexperienced person like Barriss. I want to say that the three that we saw were the recruits, right? They weren't officially given a moniker because they are still in the training phase. So Barriss is paired up with Lynn and they go on this mission or whatever. The mission fails, obviously, because Barriss pushes her off a fucking cliff. Lynn goes back to the Inquisitors because we know she survives. And then she's like, Inquisitor, look what happens when we don't fucking do stuff to these kids. We just let them kind of be Inquisitors and then they're not being trained or whatever. And then he's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. Let's start fucking torturing them. I feel like that
Okay.
is probably that's
That's a
my
reasonable
mental
enough
guy.
explanation for why this episode is the way it is. That it's like her first
Yeah.
mission, and it also leads to why the other Inquisitors are not given as long of a leash as Barriss is given in this episode.
Right. It's because if you guys read Rise of the Red Blade, you'll know that yes, a lot of the other Inquisitors were tortured to become obedient in a sense. So I feel like we could just argue that this is the inciting incident that leads to that conditioning process for the rest of the Inquisitors. Because if she is a very early adoption to the Inquisitors where they didn't have a lot of members, I think it just makes more sense because they were like, ooh, see, they technically were former Jedi, so we can't really trust them 100%, or a lot of them were at least. And then you can be like, hey, now we can control them better because we can torture them.
Yeah, we'll just
Yeah,
torture them into it. This will
yeah,
work. This will be
exactly.
easy. Everything's fine. No, the rest of the episode, like the central conceit aside, the rest of the episode is fine. I do love that they've made a lot of this particular arc of episodes the relationship between Lynn and Barriss. I think that's a really good choice because that's really strong. That's a
Uh-huh.
really strong thing that we can focus on as the audience to carry us through in a way that the Morgan episodes didn't have. They didn't really have Morgan like have anyone to bounce off of long term the way that Lynn and Barriss do, because jumping ahead to episode 3, this is going to become a clash of ideologies is ultimately where this is going to go. And I think that having it be these two in conflict with each other as embodiments of the system and pushing back against the system, I think was a really wise narrative choice. Like their debates in this episode, yes, I think it's a little ridiculous that they're having these discussions like broadly, even though Barriss is supposed to have graduated from the class of 19 BBY and is supposed to be now in Inquisitor med school.
Right.
But I love the conversations that they actually do ultimately end up having, because it shows kind of the difference between the Empire's mission statement, like what it says on paper, and then what it actually does. And a lot of times you find this in empires, you find this in governments in general. You find this in a lot of corporations, actually. A lot of corporations, they'll have their mission statement and then they will not do what it says at all. It's just on there so they can send out bullshit corporate emails and cheerlead themselves and suck themselves off in the employee's email inbox, which I've worked for a lot of corporations. They all do this.
I think what's interesting too is that I don't think Barriss was wrong in this sense. I think in this episode she kind of has this mentality of like, yeah, the Jedi were fucked up and we need to do better. I think the Empire can theoretically make this a possibility. However, the problem is that's flawed because obviously the Empire doesn't give a shit about making people's lives better. It was
No, they
about
don't. They're not going to do better.
right. It
Like,
was
oh,
never about that.
we're gonna do better. No, what if we were worse?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
just great how
it
they
goes
compare
back
that.
to, this is the thing of the dark side. It goes back to what Kimir says in the Acolyte when he's confronted, like, what do you want? And he says, I want the freedom to be myself. Okay, the yourself you want to be is violently hurting people who get in your way.
Sure.
You want to dominate other people, and not in like a sexy way. Like that is the goal of the dark side, to be able to have power over others, to get what you want at the expense of other people. And Barris is, in fact, coming to realize that.
Whoa.
Also,
Okay.
I do need to shout this out very briefly because I thought it was awesome. The Jedi that they go to fight is referred to in the episode with they them pronouns.
I have a note about this later when we get to the voice person.
Yes, and
It's
who is
it,
actually voicing this character? Yeah,
yeah. There's
but
I
this
had
is our
to Google it to
first.
double check, but yes.
This is our first explicitly non-binary character in Star Wars animation.
Yep. And I caught it too when they were talking, and Lynn very specifically says leave them. Like, and then Barris says something along like they're still alive. Like
They were about, yeah, they're still alive.
they
Like,
very purposefully say the they them
mhm.
pronouns, and I was like, I caught it the first, like I didn't catch it the first time obviously, but like when I was rewatching it this time I caught it and I was like, whoa, wait, they said it on purpose. Like that's definitely a thing. I just thought it was so interesting, and it makes sense once we go through the voice cast later because I looked up this person and I was like, let me just double check their Instagram and just see, and like, and then of course on their Instagram it does say all pronouns, so there you go.
Yes, which is awesome. So we have a non-binary character being voiced by a queer person, which
Yeah,
is fucking cool.
I love that.
Thank you, Star Wars Animation, for actually fucking doing this for once, which is awesome.
Moving on to our final episode 6, The Way Out. A shadow from Barris's past catches up with her. Now, this episode is said to take place between 3 BBY and 0 BBY. I like to think that because of what happens in this episode, I think that my best educated guess is that since most of the Inquisitors die on the mission to Malachor in Rebels or whatever, I have a theory that this is taking place. I mean, it has to be before because only because Lynn doesn't appear in Rebels, obviously, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Well, one, she just wasn't invented, but two, because I don't think she went back to the Inquisitors by that point. So
No.
I want to believe that this takes place about the same time, if not like I think what happens is we have the four core, I think, in the Inquisitors left. I think it's the Grand Inquisitor, the fifth brother, the seventh sister, and the eighth brother. And then I think Lynn is also a part of that, but she's fucking off to do this mission while the other three have to go after the Rebels crew because the Grand Inquisitor died.
Which is
Right?
really funny. Which is really funny if you subscribe to this one. Because what that means is they send the eighth brother after Darth fucking Maul. They send the fifth brother after Kanan fucking Jarrus and Ezra fucking Bridger. And then they send the seventh sister after the babies, and then I think she's after somebody. I think she might be after Ahsoka, if I'm remembering my Rebels right, which I don't think I am. But then they send Lynn to like track kids down.
Sure.
Like that's her mission that she gets
Well, if you
is just
compare
go
it,
retrieve babies.
well, if you compare it to Rebels, when we first see the fifth brother and the seventh sister, they do go after babies. Like that's the first thing that they're doing.
It's not the
So
first thing that they're doing, but it is
it's not?
in it is it's not the first time we see either of them in the show. I just can't remember what Seventh Sister's mission was. I think it might have been Ahsoka.
Or was
I
it they
think
were on a ship though, right? Like there was a ship that was destroyed.
yes, but that was the mid-season.
That was the first time we saw them?
That was not the first time we saw them.
When was the first time we saw them?
We saw the fifth brother in episode 3 because he gets off the ship and he snipes at Constantine. And then we see the seventh sister in the episode Always Two There Are,
Oh, I
where
thought
she
Always
she
Two There was their first
kidnaps.
performance or their first appearance.
Always Two There Are is, but they're not going after the babies in that episode.
I wish I just had a plethora of knowledge to know. You're right.
Well,
Those
hey,
first
well,
appearance is called
hey.
Relics of the Old Republic, is what it's called. Um,
Well, Relics, no, Relics of the Old Republic is season 1, and that's
that
the first
says that's
Inquisition of
Fifth
the
Brother's
Granding.
first appearance.
Oh, you're right. No, because I'm confusing it with Rise of the Old Masters. No, the Luminar episode from season 1. Yeah, Relics of the New Republic. Yeah, it's like episode 4, 3 or 4, and he shows up at the end of it.
Okay, you know what?
Hey, did
We
you know
don't
if you
need-
want to listen to people who have actually recently
gonna-
covered Star Wars Rebels and thus have accurate Rebels information,
Sure,
you can
yes.
listen to our friends over at Dark Side Divas who are on season 3 of Rebels, or you could listen to First Steps, a Star Wars podcast, who are also on season 3 of Rebels.
What is it?
Go
that you always
listen to
say?
all of them.
What is that you always say? It's a mythology, not a.
It's a mythology, not a history.
And yeah,
And what is
we're
it
just
you
remembering
always
what we want to
say?
remember.
What is it you always say? Stop shilling other people's podcasts and actually promote ours for a change.
There you go.
That's a thing Bradley says to me.
So all of that to say, Lynn is here to hunt down Barris.
Lynn is here.
So
Lynn
Barris
is
is
here
doing
hunting the baby and just
hunting the
runs
baby.
across Bariss.
She is confused because she's like, wow, we were gonna give up on searching for you. It's been fucking years. And I do want to point out how Lynn looks fucking fantastic and Barris looks older.
Okay, so I can explain this. I can explain
Okay.
this because Morallans are supposed to I forget how the species name is pronounced. They're supposed to live a long time, right? We saw that in the Acolyte. However, it has also been established that when you heal people, it takes some of your life energy to do it.
Oh, okay.
So she's healed so many people, it has massively prematurely aged her.
Okay, I like that. I wish they would have explained that more because I really like that
I think
aspect
it's
of it.
supposed to be a visual cue if you're in the know.
Okay, see, I didn't know she was
If
doing
if
that.
you're a Star Wars lore nerd and you're looking at her and going, because if you're the type of nerd who knows that her species is supposed to live like 200 years,
Right.
then you are also the type of nerd to remember how force healing works. And if you're the casual viewer, she just looks older.
Okay. Yeah, I thought like it was weird. I was like, damn, how much time has passed? And I was like, damn, Lynn, you look good. Like you got the Empire work done because that's how long you've been lasting. But it's only been a few years. So okay, I get it. That makes sense.
I like this episode a lot. This episode is also weird because there's so many references to other stuff happening that they just never explain. Like everybody's all hung up on who the old friend is. Like, who is your old friend that Barriss is sending them off to? Is it Ahsoka? Is it Asajj Ventress? We don't know. I'm more interested in who this traveler is. Because when the family's telling their backstory, they're like, the Empire came, we ran, and we ran into a traveler who pointed us to you. Who is the traveler?
I have a theory.
Who is the random person? I also have a theory.
I think that this episode actually sets up what we have been theorizing, which is the Path episode or Path show.
The Path Show.
Because I think the Traveler is Ventress. I
Okay.
think that she's the one out there in the galaxy finding all these force sensitive kids slash people and just trying to do her part. I think that the old friend is more than likely, obviously, Ahsoka, or it's if not Ahsoka, then it's going to have to be just one of the other, Jedi people that is on the path. Which could be what's his face.
It could be Riva.
It could be Riva. I don't know though because I want to say that they never met each other. Only because when the temple is burning or whatever and Anakin kills everybody, he quote unquote kills Riva as a youngling, right? So she's a youngling at the time that Barriss is recruited into the Inquisitors. So I want to say that like Riva is a very late addition to the Inquisitors versus I think Barriss was probably already quit by the time that Riva was inducted because I don't see them crossing paths. It just the age difference. I just don't think it makes sense. I mean, Riva's not that young, but like she's young enough to where I think that enough time has passed in the span of Kenobi and then this, thing. I don't think that they ever came across each other. And I don't think Riva's a part of the path. I think Riva's just kind of doing her own thing. I would like her to be a part of the path, but I think she's just kind of doing her own thing. I do like the idea that it was Ventress is the one who's kind of like helping people and doing stuff. But I don't know what was his what was his name again? Her ex-boyfriend.
Lux Bonteri?
No. Ventress's ex-boyfriend.
Ventress's ex-boyfriend. Oh, I thought you said Ahsoka's. My bad. Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan Voss. Sorry, that's who I think is her friend, the person that she's talking about, like that they can go see. Because
no, because she specifically says she'll know what to do. It has to be a woman.
oh, it does. Oh, then it's Ahsoka. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
I think it's supposed to be Ahsoka.
Yeah.
My brain, my insane conspiracy theory brain went, oh, the Traveler is recanonized disaster homosexual Ferris Olin from the Jude Watson books. Unfortunately, this is probably not the case.
Probably not.
Probably not. But you know what? I'm delusional.
Mm-hmm.
Let me live in my delusion. Hey, Del Rey, if you need a disaster homosexual to recanonize the disaster homosexual, call me. I'm available.
So I think we should talk about, we're running out of time, so I think we should talk about the ending of this episode.
Yes. Is Barriss dead?
I'm gonna say no.
I'm also gonna say no.
Because I don't
I
know.
think she survives.
I think so because it just doesn't, something about it just doesn't seem like, I felt like they kept setting up like, okay, here's the coordinates to this place. Go off and the person's going to help you and da 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 da. And then Lynn is able to turn, or she's able to help turn Lynn to the, well, I wouldn't say the good side, but she's able to have her turn away from the Inquisitors, I
She's
think is a
gotten
better.
out, and that's the whole
Yes.
metaphor of the cave
Right.
is once you go in, we need to get the way out. And it's
Right.
about Lynn finding her own way out.
And I think in the same way that Barriss was able to theoretically rescue that Jedi from the last episode, I think that Lynn is able to quote unquote rescue her here, take her back to her tent or whatever, and heal her in some capacity. Because we know, no one ever dies from a lightsaber to the chest
No, nobody
slash
ever dies
stomach.
from a lightsaber to the stomach,
So unless you're
except
cut in
for
half. Oh wait,
Qui-Gon
well,
Jinn.
never mind. That also doesn't actually guarantee death.
Yes,
So
cutting in half also didn't fucking do anything.
So I feel like yes, Barriss is alive. They're setting up the path, and I think that Barriss, Ventress, and Lynn will all be in the Path show, and that's just what I'm hoping for. That's the next thing of
Keep living in
animation.
your delusion, Bradley.
I mean, why else would Ventress be introduced? Why else would they bring Barriss back? I feel like they're just setting it up.
All right, do we want to talk about who wrote and directed these episodes?
Yes, please.
All right, so these episodes were directed by episode 4, go fuck yourself, was directed by Saul Ruiz. Episode 5 was directed by Stuart Lee. And episode 6 was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva. And we've talked about all those names before recently on the show. Episodes 5 and 6 were written by Matt Mignowitz. Again, we talked about him when we did the Bad Batch. So you already know who he is. However, episode 4, the good one, well, they were all good, but the great one was actually written by Nicholas Anastasiou, I think is how you say this last name. Anastasiou? I apologize to this person, but they don't have a lot of writing credits actually. They are the lead editor on season 1, episode 2 of Tales of the Jedi. They're an associate editor on 27 episodes of the Clone Wars. Basically, they've also been just an editor on the Bad Batch and just an editor on the Clone Wars. And they were also, this is interesting. They go all the way back to being visual effects editing staff on Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And they also worked on Episode 2.
Wow.
So that's who wrote this episode. Their only writing credits are this episode and the short in the spring. But yeah, that's who wrote this episode.
Nope.
Did you know that on IMDb you can tab, like it tabs off different what they do? They have one acting credit. It's Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Oh.
They are Nikanis Tasu. Let's find out who that is.
I'm assuming just random Jedi number 7.
I'm assuming it's
Coliseum.
random Jedi number 7. They are one of the guys who tosses
tosses the lightsabers
the lightsabers to them.
I fucking knew it. How did I know that though? That was it. It was one of those two guys. That's hilarious, actually. Good for them.
Yep. So that's who wrote this episode.
Would you like to know who does some of the voices in these episodes?
I would love to know who does some of the voices in these episodes, Bradley. Why don't you take us through it?
All right, rapid fire. Here we go. First episode is the voice cast in no particular order. Zeno Robinson as Amar. That is the bluish kind of goat-looking like alien. One of
the one who gets fucking murdered off screen. Yeah,
correct. Known for doing the voice of Lando in the Lego series. Meredith Salinger as Bariss Offee, returning from Clone Wars. D. Bradley Baker as a clone trooper. No surprise there.
We know who D. Bradley Baker is, yes.
Nicholas Cantu as Dante. He's kind of like that white with red hair looking Inquisitor recruit. He has also done a Star Wars voice before. He was Rowan in the Lego Freemaker Adventures series.
Which I highly recommend. They are a lot of fun and also semi-canon. Yes, some elements from the Freemaker Adventures have been mentioned in reference books.
Didn't know that. Up next, Raya Kilstead as Lynn, or Fourth Sister. She's returning her role, and like you said before, she is one of the few people who has done both the live action and the animated version of her character. So we'd love to shout her out for that. And then last in the first episode is Jason Isaacs returning as the voice of the Grand Inquisitor. He did the voice in Rebels. Next up in episode 5, we have Keith Ferguson as just governor, is what his title is. He's done the voice of Han Solo in the Lego movie, so not in anything else, but just the Lego movie itself. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Rye Chase as the voice of what's titled The Jedi, which is the non-binary Jedi character. And I did look up on their Instagram, and they do have on there specifically that they use all pronouns. So Rye Chase, a non-binary person voicing a non-binary character. Thought that was nice.
Awesome. Love that.
Uh, this is not Rye's first voice in Star Wars, though.
Oh, really?
Rye is also the voice of Metz in Young Jedi Adventures. So there's a character
Oh,
in
which
Young
one's
Jedi Adventures who's like a
Mets?
musician or something.
Oh, yeah. I know that episode because I've watched all of Young Jedi Adventures because I'm deeply mentally ill.
Okay, well then there you go. So Rye does a voice in that too.
Shout out to Rye's name for making that entire previous section very confusing to me personally.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because if for those of you who don't know, Charles has a book series of gay thriller novels where one of his main characters is called Rye. So there you go.
This this
I'm
Rye
preemptively
Chase seems infinitely cooler than the
yes.
Rye that I write, who is a disaster.
And
Who else
then
is in this?
last in the 5th episode is Jordan Currit, credited as Young Girl. That's the girl that kind of hides behind Barriss in the town. Is also done Star Wars before. She was the voice of Livy from the Star Wars Visions 2 episode called The Pit. We haven't covered Visions 2 yet, but now Jordan, shout out, you are our first voice person that we're talking about. And then the last episode, episode 6, we have Steve Bloom as what's called Attendant Number 1, which is the alien kind of helper that
If
Barriss
you've
has.
watched a Star Wars that's animated, you've heard Steve Bloom's voice.
Yes,
Because we
seen it
talked
on and
about
on.
him in the last episode.
Correct. Attendant number 2, or the kind of female attendant that Barriss has, is Anna Graves. She is the voice of Satine in the Clone Wars.
Yes, I also thought her name was familiar, and I checked, and she's done a bunch of voices for World of Warcraft.
Yes. She's also done, there was an episode, I guess, of Clone Wars where she played twin bounty hunters or something. Like, I don't know if, I don't remember that storyline as much, but she was the voice of both of the alien bounty hunters. Or something. Thought that was interesting.
She is cool. She mostly does video games, but she's dipped her toes into animation.
Here's one that you might like. So last, but certainly not least, is the father and the mother in this episode. The mother is Susie McGrath. She does the voice of, I didn't write down where it was from. I don't know why I didn't do that, but Tam Rivora. That's
Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
I don't know who that is.
Fucking love her.
So what's Tam Rivora? Just remind me because I didn't look it up.
I cannot tell you. She is one of the main characters in Star Wars Resistance, and I'm going to say absolutely nothing about her arc to you because you have not watched season 2.
Okay.
She kind of winds up being the co-protagonist of season 2.
Oh, nice. Next, to keep it in the Resistance family, we have Keston John as father, who does the voice of Marcus Speedstar in Resistance, who is, I think, one of the main character's brothers or something.
Yes.
So there you go.
Keston John, for my other neck of the woods, is also the voice of Lachlan, the Lord of Fortune in Dragon Age Absolution for 6 episodes. He has voiced a gay person before. Yay! He's also in World of Warcraft. I'm just identifying a lot of these World of Warcraft voices because the new expansion is unfortunately very good and is eating up a lot of my free time, such as that free time exists. But yes, I will always shout out Dragon Age when it appears. And that's who's voicing.
Okay, final thoughts.
These episodes are good.
I agree. These episodes are fantastic. I also want to shout out, obviously the Barriss episodes are stronger, but I think collectively this was so much better than Tales of the Jedi. By far. I think Filoni was having a good time with the first season of Tales of the Jedi. And he was like, hey, this is like a concept I want to do. He had so much fun doing it, but then he figured out what was actually made it good and was like, let's do that better in Tales of the Empire. So yes. I really liked it. I really want him to continue this trend, and I want more tales of the something. It doesn't have to be the same every time. I think actually it's better that it's an anthology and that it's different every single time. I would be curious to see though if they come back and they do a season 2 of Tales of the Jedi, a season 2 of Tales of the that would be interesting, instead of just being Tales of the Jedi is season 1, and then Tales of the Empire season 2. I think it would be interesting that if they did a second perspective season for each of these.
I really do agree that they've taken what worked in Tales of the Jedi and really, really leaned into it even more with Tales of the Empire. I love the Tales series. I think it's a great concept. I think it's fun to put a lot of time and effort and money into these stories that otherwise wouldn't have been told. And it really lets them flex their animation muscles. It really lets them flex their directing muscles. It really lets them flex their voice acting muscles. It's really cool. It's really fun. I like it a lot. So next week we're off because Bradley's got to do his job or something. And we want to give him the week that he has to wrap off so he can focus on wrapping the show and then quietly sitting on his couch watching whatever it is he's currently watching. But the week after that, we are so fucking sick of doing TV. We are so tired of it.
This week of episodes just inspired us for some reason.
It
I
did.
don't know what it was.
We looked at this week and we're like, I wonder if there's something we can do. So the Acolyte is coming. We're going to cover that. Skeleton Crew is coming. It will not be when Skeleton Crew premieres. Skeleton Crew for this point will be the last one that we're not doing as it's coming out. We're currently revisiting whether or not we want to do shows as they come out, because we do think that some of our stronger episodes have been about shows that are already out in their entirety. But for the moment, we just needed a break because we've been doing TV nonstop since the strikes ended. And we're no longer just completely a TV podcast. So Bradley, what came out recently that I have not read and you have not read, but we have decided to take a break and dive into?
Sticking with the theme of the Inquisitorus, there is a new comic book series out titled Inquisitors. It is a 4-comic run of, the Inquisitors. I don't know what the story is. I don't know what it is. You brought it up to me. So Inquisitors is just going to be just that. It's just a story about the Inquisitors. I don't know what it is or when it takes place, but I'm excited to talk about it.
I don't know anything about it either, so we're going to take a 4-week break and we're going to do another comic. So look forward to 4 weeks of coverage on Inquisitors. I think we're going to do the Acolyte after that.
Yeah,
I think we just need a fucking break.
Yeah, I think we just wanted to take this time, do this quick mini series of comics, just to kind of change things up, give us a little bit of a kind of a break from TV. And then I think we'll end the year strong with the Acolyte because we desperately want to talk about it. We just needed like time away from it to kind of like, let it soak in. Also, I this is just on a personal level. I want to take time away from the vitriol that some people have been putting out about the Acolyte. So I think removing ourselves from that.
Being brutally honest on the podcast, I feel part of the reason that I have hesitated to talk about the Acolyte is that I have to live on Twitter and Bradley does not. So if Bradley is like, I'm exhausted with the vitriol surrounding the Acolyte, I want to put some distance between me and that before we actually cover it. Imagine how emotionally I have felt about gearing up, especially when the news came through from Deadline that it had not been greenlit for a second season, which is not the same as it being canceled. And we will talk about that when we get to the Acolyte. These are not the same thing. So, I also needed a little distance from the Acolyte before I could cover it on this show.
And to that point, we're giving ourselves about a month or two before we cover it. So it's really like anything could happen in that
Anything
month.
could happen. Yeah. Did you know there's a change.org petition, which at the time of writing this has 75,000 signatures on it? Also, if you're so inclined, there are 2 hashtags, Save the Acolyte and Renew the Acolyte, going around on social media. I'm not a big hashtag person, but I have signed the petition. Sure. And if you are a petition person, that is there. You can just go to change.org and search for the Renew the Acolyte petition and sign it there if you want to see more of the Acolyte. Also, one major part of it that has not been talked about, but I do want to mention here, there's tie-in material for the Acolyte that's coming out. There's a Kelnaka comic written by High Republic scribe Cavan Scott that you can actually read. There's a book coming out called Wayseeker, I think is the title. That's right. The Vernestra and Indara book. I know the cover is
the cover's rough.
A choice. The cover's rough,
but
one of the great ways that if you love the Acolyte, you want to see more of these characters and you want to show Lucasfilm and Disney that people love these characters and want more of them, buy those books. Or if you can't afford to buy them, get them from your local library. Talk to your local library. If your local library doesn't have them, talk to them. They can probably order them. There are ways that you can help show Disney that we want more of this show. We are also going to talk about this show to end the year out. That is our plan at the moment. You know, in between all of the other things I do, like playing Dragon Age: The Veilguard, a game that I've been waiting for 10 years, or watching the TV shows that are currently out, or in fact, both of us doing all of the various other things that we do with our time, which is a great segue into all of the other things that we do with our time. So Bradley is a production coordinator / he wears a whole bunch of different hats for reality TV. You can find a bunch of shows that he has worked with on Peacock and Bravo, including such shows as Queen's Court, Married to Medicine Season 10, Temptation Island, and in fact, a new season of a show that has just debuted on Netflix, The Circle, Season 7 is now available. So you can watch that. You can see Bradley Brower's name in the credits of that episode, which is cool. I have other things going on. I am on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice, which is set in the High Republic era. That is DM'd by our friend Chris from Darkside Divas, and I use the term friend very loosely there. But also our actual friends, Hope from Jagas and Jedi, Jess from RuPaul's Pod Race, Colton from Nerdsmith, and our friend Robin. You can also find a bunch of gay thriller novels, of which the co-lead is a disaster homosexual named Rye. Those are on Amazon Kindle. I'm looking at a wider release, but currently that's the only place you can get them. They're called Beach House Studios. The Beach House is one word, one H. Also, I did want to mention, if you're not following me personally on socials, and particularly on TikTok, I talk about Dragon Age, which I've mentioned a couple times in this episode, over on my TikTok. You can follow me on there, and I also bring this up because Bradley and I are looking at going live more often on TikTok. Yeah. So you can follow our account at Gold Squadron Gaze. That's our joint account where we post clips from the podcast, and also my personal account at CW Rogers 6. And you can find me talking about other things that are not Star Wars on there. I'm not going to make that a weekly addition to the socials, but I am bringing that up now.
And you know what? Since we're throwing things in there, why don't you leave us a review?
Why don't you give us 5 stars in your preferred podcasting app? If you leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts, because I can see those,
right,
we will read the review out. You could also leave a Spotify comment. Those also help boost the show a whole lot.
I was going to say, Hope leaves us Spotify comments all the time, and I always post them if she leaves one. So I always feel like, because I'll get an alert.
Hope also sends me angry messages when I get things wrong. So shout out to Hope. Love Hope. They are working on The Mandalorian Season 3 right now over on Jagas and Jedi, but unfortunately they are about to now have to do 2 seasons of The Bad Batch, so if you haven't listened to Jagas and Jedi, please go send them some love. They are about to be suffering over there. Alright, that's it. Let's roll the socials. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com to let us know. You can also find us on Twitter at @GoldSquadGaze, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at @GoldSquadronGaze. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gaze YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze, and we'll see you next week.
Former Jedi.
Fucking hell! This is gonna make me insane. I said, we'll get to episode 3, and then you say, okay, let's talk about episode 4, and I'm like, I fucking hate it. Look, we went 2 at a time when we did Tales of the Jedi, and this time we said we're gonna do 3 in 1. Fuck me. Oh my god. My eyeballs are twitching. I need more caffeine.